start off with this book because this book is not terribly important to me or anything. I bought the Strand inside London. They actually have a better one. It's thicker. It's more expensive. I couldn't afford it. But this is so. There's two ways that I use books. I think there's reference, more superficial, just images, and then I often use those images to kind of fill in this kind of narrative that I have or that I assume or that I create, right? And then the other way I use books in a similar way, but less of me using and more of me engaging is kind of fantasy style, which I have a lot of these, mainly like interiors. For some reason, when I want to, it's just escapism, So like this book is all interiors from England, from London, and it's got like Victorian shit and all this other stuff from back in the day. And I'll just look through this, and on like a rainy Sunday, and I mean, look, I wish that like places in New York existed like this that weren't expensive and weren't for yuppies, and is just like probably what this is, which is just a pub that's existed for 300 years, and they've paid it off. All the materials have like paid off and all that, and they probably sell beers for like super cheap. There is one image that really stays with me and actually has crossed over to like artwork and stuff that I make, which is this one, which is an eel pie shop, which is actually really relevant to right now, because this like there's artworks that I make that are kind of in isolation, self-isolation, whether that's like physical or kind of in my mind. But this eel, all of these old eel pie shops are so brutal and sterile and isolating, in my opinion, and also minimal and blah blah blah. But there's something so harsh about them. I think that they were always white tiled because they're trying to promote cleanliness, I think. Like any kind of butcher or like fish shop or whatever. And then the fact that they were selling eel pies, I've never had one. My dad says it just tastes like chicken, but jellied eel, like regular people couldn't afford whatever, so they would just get eels from the Thames and make it jellified and then put it in a pie. And I love pie. I love a pastry. I really do. So with all that, it's like it's kind of the both worlds together. It's me escaping in books, and it's also kind of informing. I think I used I used this image in a zine I had made once, but also like that tape that I put out last year, the original music thing. That's what this is. You know what I mean? It's just like totally
recreating that. Yes.
Yeah, and like it turns out that my studio is in an office building, and it sort of looks like this in a way. I mean, not as like beautiful and Victorian, but same sterile office space kind of style. And yeah, it just follows me. And then I do things, and then I look at them, and I go, oh, okay, it looks like this somehow. It's got the same palette, or it's got the same feeling. So
what can you show me the cover again?
Oh, this one, yeah, I just got it at the Strand. It's just some like regular book. It's nothing special, but I have a bunch of these kind of books where I go to the Strand really, and I just get, it's mainly interiors or exteriors of like farmhouses in Austria or something.
Yeah, what kind of, I was gonna ask, like, what kind of like what do you look, you kind of described it already, but what do you look in a book when you want to go and buy a book? Why would you go and buy a book?
Again, there's two reasons. One is for reference, and that's more kind of straightforward and clear. And the reference, it's a big variety, right? But then there's this other one that's more magical, which is to try and own this kind of fantasy. And for me, it's based around interiors and exteriors of architecture and stuff like that. Just because and landscapes and things, because I think I can relate to that, and it really excites my imagination, and then I want to buy the book to kind of harness that thing. But what's funny is that oftentimes when I do buy the book, and I like them, and I'm happy I have them, but I don't exactly ever, it doesn't recreate the fantasy or whatever I had imagined by just simply looking at it. It needs to be both my mood and my way of thinking and the book, and it kind of enhances it, and it happens at once. It never reaches, I never like finish. You know what I mean? It never reaches a climax, not to be too, but so I think I buy these books to try and reach that thing without ever getting there. And, that's it. What can you do? But I kind of love that. And it brings me peace, and it's fun. And while I'm looking at these things, I was thinking about just material objects, and I know that's got a bad rep, and it definitely can be bad, but I'm a very materialist person, I think. But I think it's because everything that I own and everything that I have is deliberate. And I think that that's actually more what I associate with. It's not being material, but it's just making these decisions, these deliberate decisions. And it's a way of expressing myself by surrounding myself with stuff that I've like meticulously chose and researched, or just had a personal story to, or an attraction to. Like, I always say this, but my hooks in my bathroom, I have shitty hollow doors in my apartment, but these hooks I got in Japan at like this hardware store, and these hooks are like the best hooks you could ever find. They're so simple, but every time I put my towel up on this hook every single day, I see the hook and I go, oh, I was in Japan once. Like, that already is incredible. Then this hook is just beautiful. So although it's on this shitty hollow door from Home Depot, it's still, I don't know, it brings me a lot of joy, and it releases something out of me. So anyway,
cool.
There's this one, which I wanted to show you, that is pretty much just the design that I actually do love. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay.
But it's about tartans from Scotland. And I guess I'm an Anglophile. I don't know. But I love tartans. I do. But this book in particular is the design actually that has made me so attracted to it. And it's because it's so redundant. Let me try and show you. And it's printed, I don't know how, but like whatever, with plates. So these tartan designs, which are really flat, you know what I mean? Or monochromatic, I think is the term. Again, I don't know. But and it really makes sense with the way tartans are, because it seems as if it's like a different color, but when you look up close, even with real tartans, they're solid colors and they're stitched together. But anyway, this whole book is just, it's got the crest, the family or the clan, the description, and then the tartan pattern. It's like boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? And that, like, to me, and that's very much like the design over the content, because I'm not sitting here looking for at hours at these tartans, but I just love flipping through this book. This I'm like really kind of proud to own, just because it is such a beautiful book.
Where did you buy it?
The Strand.
Okay, so the Strand is definitely a place, a to-go place for you.
Hell yeah, it's a classic New York place, institution.
Where else do you buy books?
Well, often you give me books from other places. I've got some really good ones from you. Well, there was this one from when we went to Austria, which was really nice. But if I go places, I'll go to thrift stores and stuff like that and get a book. I think I bought this book. I can't remember where, but this book I bought at a thrift store for probably a couple bucks. I think it was in Maine when I was doing a job there, and I bought this book. And oftentimes those are the places that will have what I was saying, which is like these kind of more straightforward books, which I think is also due to the fact that the way they used to lay out books wasn't digital. So I think that makes their designs a little bit more straightforward too.
There was a plate that needed to be made and so on.
Yeah. This is just a calendar from Fortunato Brothers, which is, I would say, one of the two best pasticerias in New York City. The other one being Villa Abate Alba in Bensonhurst. But this is in Williamsburg, the old Italian Williamsburg. And this calendar, we probably got together, and it was when we'd go there every morning for like a cornetto and an espresso before we went down to the newsstand when we had the newsstand.
Yeah.
like almost every single morning, and you would get the Italian newspaper because they had them, and we would just sit there, and you could sit there for a long time. There wasn't ever, besides like the old Italian guys, there wasn't a lot of other people sitting in there, and they actually have good coffee and it's not expensive. And so this just reminds me of that. And I just love, I wanted to represent like more of the, what I would consider suburbs of New York City, you know, the outer boroughs other than New York. And I think, I mean, I'm from Staten Island and I don't like Staten Island and I never did, but I'm realizing that it's an integral part of who I am and how I kind of see the world. And especially now, I think it gives me a broader perspective, because I'm the first one to call Staten Island culture and their people, not for nothing, trash. But I mean, it's literally the biggest trash dump, like biggest garbage dump in the world, or it was before they closed it down. But I think it gives me a perspective that often people don't have. They're either, you know, Trump supporting middle to working class people from like white people from the suburbs, right? That were like second, third generation, whatever, or they're like creative types that are kind of just in Manhattan and have their own bubble, and those are two separate bubbles. And I feel like I kind of clash with, or maybe not clash, but interact with both of those kind of both of those people. And I just think that it kind of informs a lot with like how I am and how I kind of operate and how I'm sort of feel like I'm sort of outside the thing, but I'm also very much not a part of that thing or this thing or whatever thing. I feel like a lot of people feel that way, especially creative people. But because of my exact like environment and where I live and all that stuff. So this kind of, I think, exemplifies that. And it's got this great spread that I showed you before, which is, I mean, like, come on. This like it's a picture of a cannoli. Amazing. But then they have this a pizza pie, but made out of marzipan. And then there's like this picture.
It's kind of digitally made, right? The layout.
Oh, so digital. Yeah, this is like, the way this looks is South Brooklyn. I mean, this is from Williamsburg, but this is so New York. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not pretty or anything like that. This is also like, this goes to show something that I've come to terms with, which is I don't have an elegant way of saying it, but like, I used to kind of hate on this shit because it's so dumb, or at least I thought it was dumb. I mean, it's dumb is not the right word. I don't have the right word for it. But now, as I've gotten older, and kind of come back to it a little bit and appreciated it, it's also for real. You know what I mean? And there's something that's like that's really important to me. You know, and you know what? This is fucking DIY.
Yeah.
You know, like when I was 15 and I was trying to make a fanzine and I was like intentionally making the letters crooked and shit, that's not DIY. You know what I mean? This is DIY. So that's why I have that.
Do you remember when you started like looking at book as something more than something that you had to look at for school?
First memory of a book that stuck with me to this day, which is Goodnight Moon, which is a children's book. I'm sure everyone's got children book kind of thing stuck in their head. But there's this one effect that they used in Goodnight Moon, which is like they turn off the lights, but the fire is still glowing red. And so the way they printed it is that they desaturated every color. Either they desaturated the color or they just made it darker, but they kept that fire red, just plain red, printed red. But because every other color was now desaturated, that red looked like it was glowing. And that to me has always stuck with me. And to this day, it's this red that doesn't actually exist. It's like in my mind, it's just red that I see. I've seen it and I've tried to recreate it in different ways. And I even like, I'm attracted to certain objects that I have this red, but it's like pink and red and orange at the same time. In my mind, it's the same as My Bloody Valentine, you know, that album, Loveless, that color, which is like a gradient of colors, but it's kind of one color in my mind because it doesn't exist. It's a fantasy, just like the interiors.
Thank you so much.
You think that's good? Did we get enough books?
I think we got enough books.